and welcome to Last Week On, the podcast where we take our favourite TV shows, movies, and, well, our favourite everything at this point, and we go back through them. My name is Adam Straughan, and I am really excited to announce that this is the first episode of a brand new series. We are covering HBO's The Last of Us. I am so excited to jump into this. But before we get to that, I have a special guest host. He is a member of alt-pop duo King Vagabond, and he's also a music marketing guru. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome to the podcast for the first time, Mr. Joey Dean. How are you doing?
Silent applause. I'm doing great, Adam. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super happy to be here.
Oh, of course. Like, I am super pumped to cover this with you because I know you love the show. I know you love the video game. And Joey and I had a weekend out recently, like last weekend gone. And then we were talking about the show. And then you were like, wait, are you going to cover this on the podcast? And I was like, actually, I wanted to do this. So I am so excited that the stars aligned. You know, everything was written out there and then we've made it work. So I'm super pumped to get into this. But before we do, Joey, I need to ask you, tell me just your origin story of like how you came to The Last of Us and why you love it so much.
So I definitely got a little bit of a late start with the game. It came out in 2013. I don't think I played it earlier than 2016.
Okay.
Around that time, I was rekindling my gaming flame. A lot of flames here, but my gaming flame was out for a little bit. And it was the one game that really kind of sucked me in, and I was like, whoa, this is cool. So before I dedicated my life to music, I pursued a degree in literature, and it's still in the back of my mind that in the future I'll be writing, and I hope to be a published author. And I typically gravitate toward fiction, whether it be fantasy fiction or strange post-apocalyptic horror fiction. So it has a special place in my heart based on theme alone. But as I was reintegrating gaming into my life and I was playing this, I felt so many of my literary muscles working, and it just felt remotely groundbreaking. The level of commitment to the storyline and the narrative. I had played many really great games up until that point, but none that were that narratively immersive. And I spent years of my life analyzing literature and, you know, dissecting, breaking it apart. And it's one of my favorite things to do.
Right.
And people hate watching movies with me and TV shows with me because generally within the first 5 or so minutes, I know what's going to happen. My brain is exceptionally analytical with stuff, and I love to work out those muscles with certain things. And I don't know if ever before I'd been able to do that with a video game to that extent. So, yeah, I mean, I really, really, really love it. And my current music project, King Vagabond, is inspired by a novel that I was writing, which takes place in a post-apocalyptic world. So I absolutely have felt the energetic ripples of The Last of Us throughout my creative life. I wouldn't say it's the exclusive inspiration, but I think just the genre at large that is post-apocalyptic horror has greatly inspired my creative world. So it's something I keep with me a lot, and I'm really excited to read these zombies to fill.
I love that. And it's what's interesting you've said about is that, like, you know, it almost when you watch it and when you play it, it feels like it's a novel already. You know, like the world building and everything in there. It's so easy just to lose yourself in it. Very much like when you're reading a novel and when you're writing a novel as well. You know, you feel this world around you, and that's what made me gravitate towards it. So, like it was weird for me, 2013, and my brother's a big fan of like the Naughty Dog games. Like he was playing all the Uncharted and everything like that. And I remember him telling me about this new game, The Last of Us. I knew nothing about it. And then it was just one day we were in the same house, and he was like, "Oh, you know, have you heard of this Last of Us?" And I was like, "Well, you've mentioned I've seen little bits, but I know nothing about it." And he was like, "I'm gonna go play it. Do you want to come and watch?" And I was like, "Okay, whatever." So anyway, I went up. And like he was about halfway through the game, so I kind of had like no context of what was going on, but it didn't matter because I was in. And like we come from a background of like playing Resident Evil games, Silent Hill, like a lot of horror-based games. Obviously, zombies there as well. But I'd never played or seen a game like this, where it was so cinematic and it was so beautiful in its dystopia. And I was just like, wow, like I'm all in. And then literally, like I watched him play and I was like, I can't watch anymore because it's going to spoil stuff. And then like the next day, I think I literally went on, banged on the PS3, and I just started my game, and then I was just in. And wow, like I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I always know when I love something like that because when I start playing it, I'm not stopping. I keep coming back to it. And that's the telltale sign of I'm all in, I'm invested. But yeah, the world building, just the characters, the story, just everything for me is a big tick. It gets so many things right. I'd never played a game like that before. And it's incredible. And then when I heard that HBO were making it into a TV show, I was like, well, Neil Druckmann's involved, like Craig Mason, who obviously did Chernobyl, which is fantastic as well. And like, I was just like, I'm all in. These are perfect. Great studio behind it, great people doing it. I'm all in. And here we are. So yeah, I'm excited to go through it with you, Joey. This could be fun.
Me too.
All right, so let's dive straight into episode 1 of The Last of Us, which is titled When You're Lost in the Darkness, which will obviously come back to that title as well.
Yes.
So yes, this episode is directed by Craig Mazin, who I've obviously said, like director of Chernobyl. It was written by him and Neil Druckmann as well. And I'm so pleased that Neil Druckmann, the game director and writer, is involved in this as well.
Mm-hmm.
It stars Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey, Nico Parker, Merle Dandridge, Anna Torv, who I can't wait to talk about. She's one of my favorites, and Gabriel Luna. So I just want to say before we get into this as well, as a one serious note, the passing of Anna Wershing. Now, she was the original voice of Tess in the video game, and she recently passed at the age of 45, which is no age at all. Incredible actress. I remember when I first ever saw her was in the TV show 24. She played Renee Walker in that show, and I remember seeing her then, and I just loved her ever since. And then fantastic in this, video game, and just it's so sad. But I know that HBO, when episode 3 of the show first aired, it didn't have this, but it's recently been added where there's a memorial speech at the front of the episode for her, which is really sweet. But
Love
yeah, that's
that.
lovely of them to do that. A really sad passing, incredibly talented actress. And yeah, it's just sad to see. So I just wanted to say that before we jump in. All right, let's jump into episode 1. Now, I want to talk about this opening for me, Joey. It's weird because there's a cold opening, then there's the opening, but the opening is split into 2 parts. You
Mm-hmm.
get the kind of the Sarah part, you get the outbreak part, which is when basically you get the Sarah part, which is all added. We then get the video game start, but then before that, we get this cold opening. Now, just for context, we have scientists talking on stage. It's 1968 in a talk show. They're talking to the host. They're talking about viruses and everything like that. And then they start talking about microorganisms. And then we get, fungus is mentioned, and then the cordyceps. Now, that's like the key point of the entire show and video game. What did you think of this opening, Joey?
At first, I was just taking it in. I knowing Neil Druckmann was involved, I had all faith in the world that it was just going to work out. So I was
Right.
like, all right, I'm not going to judge anything. I'm going to walk into this experience as a fan with the level of appreciation that I have for the game,
Yeah.
trickling into what I will develop for the show, hoping that it reaches the same potential that the game reached.
Mm-hmm.
However, I liked that it introduced 2 strong concepts. First, that this is something that has been a topic. I know on the HBO podcast, they spoke a little bit about the idea of what happens when we ignore things that are in front of our face. And I thought that was such an interesting topic to bring up. But I felt more importantly for the fans of the show, which primarily were jumping into watching it right away, it set up this idea that there was going to be a backstory extrapolated. In the game, it's so PC. You're picking up notes, you're deciphering governmental history and the kind of counter-governmental groups that are terrorizing the governments, but there isn't this sit-down explanation. And although I don't necessarily like the idea of spoon feeding an audience, I also like the idea that they immediately were saying to the audience, this is not the same thing as the game.
Yeah, yeah.
We are bringing in more history, more context. We're taking your, you know, quote unquote two-dimensional gaming experience and we're making it three-dimensional. We're bringing a
Hmm.
whole another dimension to this. And I really enjoyed that for it. And I think that's what made them, I would imagine that's what made them stick to those guns.
Hmm.
Um to plant the seed that this is something that's been, which allows us to have flashbacks, go back in history and see it unfold. But it also plants the seed of this is not identical to the game. We're providing more context, more history, more information. And I think it resonating well gave a lot of permission for all the things that would be a little different moving forward.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It's like it's very much what you said, which is when you play the game, it starts very differently. You kind of are you have no idea what's going on. You know that there's a massive event happening, but you really have no idea. And for a long time, you can just think generic zombie outbreak, right? And I think this, as you said, in the video game, we kind of walk around, we pick up notes, we read newspaper articles, we hear things on radios, everything like that. And this kind of remembers it's like, hey, this is for TV. Come on, we have to like change up the medium a little bit here. And when we get that introduction as well, it's kind of like, right, we're all in. It's really interesting because I'm watching this with my partner who's never played the video games.
Mm,
So I know things that's going to happen. And I'm kind of watching his reaction with stuff. But it's nice where he's kind of like learning about this world and everything through the TV medium, whereas I kind of know about it through the game. So it's nice that we've got this kind of dual kind of analysis of the show going on. And I love that so much. I think it worked really well. There's echoes of global warming in there as well, talking about like
yes.
as the world kind of heats up, then like, the
Mm-hmm.
fungus will then evolve, and it's foreshadowing. And I love that the final word when like, the host says to the scientist, so then what happens if that happens? And he just says, we lose.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing that he says.
You and
And
I
he's
have
like,
the
okay,
same notes.
yeah, honestly, I love that. The foreshadowing. It's just for somebody who's never played the games going in, you hang on those words like,
Yeah.
ooh.
Yeah.
And then when it cuts to black, and then we get the beautiful credits. Like the opening credits, it's all of the fungus and everything growing. It's very
Mm-hmm.
Game of Thronesy, kind of rising up from
Of course.
the from the
Yeah.
bottom. But I love as well at the end you get the final kind of fungi growing together, and it's the outline of like Joel and Ellie. I think that was really cool.
Love.
Just the silhouette, really kind
Love.
of an artistic appreciation of what's going to happen. Beautiful, love that.
Yeah. I actually want to talk a little bit about the "we lose" quote because it really sat with me. I think
Mm,
there's so much intention behind these setups in the show, and I'm
mm,
excited to really break down the scenes we might overlook. And this being the final line of this meticulous opening that is very different. I think it sets up a big motif that we're going to see. And without talking too much about future episodes, we do
mm,
see this brought back in as a motif
yeah.
in episode 2 with a line that Tess says. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about the idea of global warming paired
Mm,
with the idea of this isn't new news. Like we're kind of ignoring the impending doom that is happening. And the specific crowd shot in which they're all really still, bizarrely frozen, just kind of staring. And I just thought it was
yeah.
so eerie. It was so poetic, but I think
Mm,
it really resonated within this idea of this man is sharing very potentially scary information that we see unfold in a very scary way. And the
mm,
crowd is devoid of response.
yeah.
And it seems to be a little bit of a commentary. And I think the global warming commentary, specifically with slightly getting warmer, I just think I thought it was a very interesting choice. And then I kind of like that they left it as the opening scene and kind of moved past it, but they were like, we're gonna, wink wink a little bit, and then we're gonna move on. But we gotta say
Yeah.
something.
No, I think it worked really well. And it's for me, it was like brilliantly done. Perfect setup for what we're going to see. And as you said, with the audience as well, just sitting watching as well, it's a perfect analysis like of
Yeah.
what we do in like society when we just sit and watch. And it was brilliantly done, brilliantly acted as well for those three actors who were only in that moment. Really, really well done. Loved it. And then we meet Sarah. Now, all of this completely different from the video game. And I will actually, signpost where it starts with Sarah in the actual video game. But all of this opening, we do we wake up, like Sarah's waking up. She's kind of going downstairs, making breakfast. I love that she's listening to the song Tomorrow by Avril Lavigne. Just places it perfectly in 2003, which is amazing. Now, she's going downstairs, she's making breakfast for, Joel because it's his birthday. That's her father, Joel. Now, there's a very important line that's said here. And this comes back in episode 3. I'll mention it now. And when we cover episode 3, I'll come back to this. And that's when she's talking about making him pancakes for his breakfast. And then he says, "Oh, we're all out of pancake mix." So important because that
Mm.
particular moment comes back in episode 3. Just remember that. Keep that in your minds because we will come back to that. All right. We learn it's Joel's birthday. So Tommy's there as well. They're talking about a job that they've got to do. And again, the imagery here is fantastic because we see a butterfly in the window.
Mm.
That butterfly comes back later on in this episode. Again, she wakes up. There's a butterfly I think, on her bedding when she wakes up as well. But that particular butterfly that you see, that blue butterfly that's hanging in the window, we see that again later on in this episode. And it's a nice little moment of like this kind of, innocence. It's a connection to the daughter figure. It's a really interesting motif. And I'm guessing we'll see more of that later on as well. But yeah, so what did you think of this little opening, Joey?
I loved it. My first impression was that Sarah, just the POV of Sarah waking up, although different, was really a really nice place to start because that is, we'll talk later on, but that is where the game starts.
Yeah.
Obviously, it kind of gets people thinking like, "Ooh, are we jumping into the action? She's in bed," but
Yeah.
then we realize, oh, okay, it's morning. This is different situation.
Mm-hmm.
I also really acknowledged the pancake mix line, and there's a few other instances throughout this episode we'll talk about that kind of bring in that idea, which was confirmed in episode 3.
Yep.
I really enjoyed their conversation at dinner time. Again, one of those things that you would look over. She pours him orange juice and says vitamin C. Then she says, "How old are you? 36? You're going to be wearing diapers soon." And then there's eggshells in the eggs, and she says calcium. There's just this heavy talk of health, of medical terminology, and the microbiological sphere. And I thought it was an interesting, every choice was so intentional. And then my favorite line that they have, or favorite part of the conversation that they have, is when Tommy gets there and Sarah says he loves you, and Joel says he's dependent on me, and Sarah says very passively, "I think it's the same thing." And I think we kind of see this seed being planted, and Joel's character starts to really unfold as the show goes on, specifically with the idea of where is the boundary and the overlap of love and care? Where can those things be similar in that it is mistaken or it is equated to? So in future, it sets up the idea that when Joel's taking care of people throughout the show, that it will reach a frequency of love potentially. That there's this idea of, for Joel, or for the conversation within this family, that being dependent on and loving are maybe the same thing. I also really enjoyed the character setup of Joel. His t-shirt's inside out. Him and Tommy don't know where Jakarta is. Sarah does have a lot of this information, and it's an ironic line, but Tommy says there's hope for us yet. And concluding the breakfast scene, I felt like it painted a really nice picture of what's to come. It was like a lot of these little mini seeds being planted that when you watch it over again, you're like, oh, okay, that's what they're talking about here. And that's the character Joel is playing. Which, I'll bring up more instances in which that character dynamic and kind of like care and love and that overlap come up just in this episode alone.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting because Joel has different relationships within this first episode. You see like his relationship to his daughter, you see his relationship to Tommy, you see his relationship to Tess, and it's different every single time. And then eventually when he does meet Ellie or Veronica, even that relationship's very different, and purposefully so. And it's interesting that you talk about how Joel has these relationships with different people. His needs and the way that he converses with different people is really evident throughout this episode alone. And as the show goes on, some develop, some stop, some kind of become stagnant. And it's really interesting. The character of Joel goes on a massive arc. And I'm really, really excited to cover that as the episodes go on because, oh boy, does he go through some stuff. All right. Obviously, importantly here, Sarah takes Joel's watch and money from the drawer upstairs. I like the little kind of reference to this, how in the game you actually are picking through drawers to look for stuff as well. So I like it's a little bit of a reference to that as well. But very important, she takes Joel's watch and money. And, we kind of have an idea as gamers, like what's going to happen there. But it was interesting just to see that, she's taking money as well. And then we step outside. We see the infamous neighbors next door. We see the elderly woman sitting down. She's being force-fed kind of like biscuits, eating the biscuits. Another kind of
Hanging
sign
out
of
of her mouth.
foreshadowing. Literally, and he's like pushing them into her mouth. And I love like they're offering Joel and Sarah, and they're just like, no, thanks. We're good. And obviously, yeah, Joel kind of drops and says, oh, yeah, like Sarah, we'll come and see you later on after school. And again, foreshadowing there. Now, just to finish off this kind of initial section, we get Tommy is driving Joel to this job. So they're going to this job. And obviously, they're going to drop Sarah off at school. Now, this school seems really important. And it could be something that's very easily overlooked, but it's really important to address. So, the fastest school day ever is this one lesson, by the way. So, Sarah goes in, she's in class, sitting down, writing notes. And then she gets like this flash of like it's sunlight hitting somebody's bracelet and it's like hitting her in the face. And she just looks over and all you see is just this girl's hand and it's just shaking, uncontrollably just shaking. And she's just watching for a moment. And again, it could just be nothing. It could just be, kids in class could just be like, tapping their hand to the beat of music, whatever it is. But when you see what happens, that shaking hand is so important. And why is that, Joey?
It's actually very focused in specifically. So there's actually coughing that happens at the same time. But later on, when we're appearing into the QZ for the first time, there's a cut to the infection and what the infection, like the symptoms of the infection is. And the shaking of the hand or hands shaking, twitching, etc., coughing. These are two of the symptoms. And then we see it later on being tested out with Ellie. And it was really interesting to see it in the classroom setting early on, because when you're watching it, you don't really know what's happening. At first, I thought that she was actually being like kind of summoned by this person. Maybe it was a friend. But I also thought it was interesting, the choice of it being a bracelet. I think that this episode specifically sets up a larger motif as well of time. And the kind of theme of the broken watch, which I also really enjoyed when she got it. There was a switchblade in there, which really paralleled her to Ellie. And I think that they intentionally set up a juxtaposition between Sarah and Ellie, because obviously they will reach similarities throughout the story, but there's very big differences between the two. But there was this kind of like putting down the switchblade as opposed to picking up the switchblade, different responses, different people, different personality traits. I felt like the watch being broken, and then that's something that is throughout the show, really focuses a motif on Joel being this character that's kind of stuck in time. This idea that when certain traumas happen, time is very still. And there's so many instances that cut to a clock. There's a clock in her bedroom, multiple times it's cut to that. The clock in the classroom, cut to that. And then, of course, of all things, that's reflecting, it's something that could be a watch. So maybe it's a negligible detail, and maybe I'm over analyzing at this point, but there is an emphasis on the clock, the wrist, that idea. I mean, it could have been anything that he was moving or she was moving, whoever the student was, but it emphasized the focal point of this episode, which is Joel's clock, Joel's watch. I also noted, and I loved this, I love numbers, and they're in house 11. That's their address, and it looks like the opening credits with Joel and Ellie saying to each other. That's interesting. I mean, it's just 2 lines, but I was like, what is 11? Like, they could have picked any number, but like they're gonna, it's actually 1:11 p.m. right now, on the dot. And I thought that was a really interesting detail, minor, but there. And then we with the neighbor situation, the whole Atkins conversation was so funny, but also was implying that Joel isn't eating carbs. which is an
Yeah.
important through line. But yes, I mean the class scene, one more detail was so funny. She said, I swear you will be using this later in life.
Yeah.
It's like, no, the world's about to end. You're not.
Yeah.
And there's also this sentence that she's speaking the teacher in class is, where are you going? Which I think is another motif.
Mm,
It's kind of the idea of like where the episode ends, like where are you moving toward, but it's also this kind of larger idea of like where are we as where is society moving, where are people moving, where's Joel moving, like where are we going to, like where's the
mm.
motion. um and then of course she gets on the bus and she goes to the city.
Correct. And obviously, just on that as well, the episode's called, When You're Lost in the Darkness.
Mm,
Interesting motif of where are you going?
yeah.
But yeah, so she gets on the bus and then she stops off in town and then she goes into like this kind of basically clock shop,
Mm,
which again is that's like slapping you in the face with all the clocks on the wall, right? She
yeah.
goes in and then obviously, takes the watch to the guy, and they have a little bit of back and forth as well. She's like, "Really, it's that cheap to get this watch fixed?" And he's like, "Okay, more." And she's like, "No, no, I'm okay." And gives him the watch, which I really like that. And I love the urgency here. This is the first time in the whole episode we feel any sense of urgency,
Yes,
and this is
love
when
that.
the owner of the shop, same, the owner of the shop, I'm guessing it's his wife, comes out straight away and it's like, we've got to go, we're closing early, and he's like, "We close at 7. What are you talking about?" She's like, "No, no, we're closing." And like, you've got to go, got to go. And she's like, "Wait, well, I need my watch fixed." He's like, "Oh, I've managed to fix it." Gives her the watch back. She's got that. It's now working. But it's like, come on, time's are ticking. Literally, things are happening now. Pushes her out into the street, close sign, locks the door, done. And like, we're kind of, I mean, you and I, Joey, play the games. We kind of like, okay, it's starting. We know what's going on. But it's nice, like, kind of from, people's point of view who haven't played the games, watching, they're like, this sense of urgency. What is happening? Like, what is going on? And then all the little moments throughout this kind of opening when we see, like, we hear like sirens in the distance, we see planes fly over, and it's like this impending doom of things that are starting to happen. And you're like, what is going on? And I just love that sense of urgency from the shopkeeper who's seen something on the news and thinks, no, we are getting the fuck out of here.
I also noted that as kind of like the, it's not the inciting incident, but it's when the tone of the show changes. There's
Mm,
hinting toward it until that point, but that's the moment I think the tone of the show completely changes, and it creates suspense for the first time, which I really enjoyed. And I thought it was really interesting that it's happening in a watch slash clock shop.
yeah.
Really
Mm,
affirming the idea of time as a fixture. She's surrounded by clocks. Every wall is covered. There is this idea of time surrounding or time constricting, restricting, boxing in. And I really enjoy that imagery down to the window curtain is a clock that, pulls
mm,
down. I mean, I just thought it's just like they're slapping you in the face with the amount of clock situations. And I also, maybe negligible because this is Texas, but the clock shop is named Lone Star, which reminded me of like the North Star, i.e., a directional, like where are you going, but also the idea of being alone, which is something that
mm.
comes up. Um, that obviously Joel is that's something Joel will have to manage through. And I don't, I say it's potentially negligible. I don't think it's negligible. I think every detail is intentional, but it was a nice way to kind of maybe ease that in with it being Texas and the Lone Star State.
Agreed. Like on that point, I love that the barbershop next door, did you know it's like a real barbershop, like in real life? So like it's the same barbershop's name, like everything. And like there's interviews with the guy who owns it on YouTube as well. And he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, people come here because they've seen it in The Last of Us." I love that. I absolutely love that they kept it the
That is
same.
great. That is really great. I
um,
didn't hear that or know that. That's really cool.
yeah, it's fun. So then, yeah, from there, obviously, Sarah comes back, but remember, she's visiting the neighbors. So she goes in, obviously, is chatting to them. We see the granny again from the opening, who's sitting in the chair. Neighbor's like, "Oh, yeah, I've been making like cookies. Do you want them?" And she's like, "Oh, chocolate chip," and like, "Oh, raisin." And like the
Mm.
face that Sarah pulls in that moment, it's the face that I would pull at her age, which is just, really? So she's like, I'll pass.
Pruning
Again,
old
we
people vegetables.
I know,
I mean,
right?
fruits, they're not vegetables, whatever.
Right. But
Same thing.
just that she's dodging a bullet. And it's so interesting that I'm
Yeah.
using that terminology because she dodges so many things through this opening until we get the impactful moment, which we'll
Until,
get to.
yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's so interesting that the motif of dodging a bullet literally is set up all the way through this opening for Sarah until it's too late. But I love as well. Now, this for me is pure horror movies, and I'm here for this. The moment when she's looking at the DVDs and we see the granny sitting in the chair behind her, just over her shoulder shot. My God, that was incredible. That's pure horror movie 101. Something because the granny's out of focus as well, which focuses on Sarah. We see some movement. We kind of obviously this reanimation, this very still woman and sitting in a wheelchair. And then we just see the mouth open agape. And we can't really see anything technical wise or anything at this point. We just see this open mouth. And that is just weirdness. It's
Mm.
weirdness in that moment. That shouldn't be happening. And obviously, for that, at that moment, we're kind of thinking, what the hell is actually going on? And again, that's mirrored by later on when Sarah's leaving, the dog's just sitting, staring at the granny in the chair. That for me is perfect setup. It's foreboding. It's weird. We don't know what's going on exactly, but I love that.
Oh, it was so good. I
Mm.
also so the main note I wrote down in all capitals and I started it was the fucking floral. The amount of fucking floral
Yeah.
in this house on their clothes made me want to
Mm.
vom.com. But
Hmm.
I also think it's like such a cute head nod to the game, and I also think the idea of time standing still comes through in that the world is frozen at this point in time, and it's these details when you're playing the video game, walking into a house and you see all these like meticulously designed wallpapers. You see even beneath the TV stand they're like storing board games. There's so many
Mm.
details of an
Yeah.
occupied home that are very human that I think is just so lovely and is the reason why I fell in love with the genre to begin with. Because when you walk into a desolate space that was once occupied, and it becomes devoid, it's such a significant sensation. And I think
Mm.
that balance, that friction of devoid versus occupied, is really interesting. So the first time we see this grandma, she is she's essentially a zombie. She's in a wheelchair. She can't move. She can't even eat her food. It's falling out of her mouth. She is immobile, which is the idea
Mm.
of what we think of a zombie. It's very devoid. It's very empty. It's very still. It's very slow. And for the first time, we're seeing something or someone that would be traditionally completely devoid, an elderly woman, become occupied. And so she becomes reanimated. And I think it creates this juxtaposition that this type of infection is different than other zombie infections. Zombie infections are typically something that will eat away at the inside and destroy, whereas this occupies and rebuilds. And they do explore that a little bit in the opening scene, but I think it was really interesting, especially once we start seeing the infected move, that it's exceptionally different than how we typically perceive zombies. And as a fan of this genre, I often look to a way to tell a story that has been told so many times in a different way. And that subtle detail that we experience here, I think, is such a nice setup. And it's another reason why I fell in love with the games, because it explored it a little differently. It was something I'd seen before, but I was looking at it from a completely different perspective. Um, and then of course she is looking through the movies at this moment, which is such a nice head nod to Curtis and Viper 2, which is what they end up watching, which is like such a
Yeah.
dialogue vantage point in The Last of Us 2.
Yeah.
That the Curtis and Viper films are really comically explored, which I think it was such a fan moment to see that. I thought it was really sweet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
But the
lovely.
fucking floral, man, oh god, it was the worst.
Yeah, and then I love that, when she steps outside, this is the first sign that we see like the jets that fly over. And you're kind of like, okay, this is foreboding now. We've had, the woman rushing her out of the store. We've had the granny freaking out. And then we see like the jets flying over. We know that something is coming, and the tension builds so well throughout this opening. It's really, really well done for something that never existed in the games. It's done really well for television. Now, she goes back, and then, we get this conversation as well, which is fantastic. So Joel comes in late. He doesn't have a cake, which is what he said he was going to have. And then sits down. It's nice that they're sitting on opposite sides of the couch, because in the video game, they're sitting on different sides. I don't know if it's just a suggestion of, that happened in the game. This is the TV show. It's like a different thing. But then I love that, talking about, she mentions, oh, I got you this present and all of this, and then presents the watch that is now working. The conversation as well, when he's like, how did you get this? She's like, oh, drugs. I sold hardcore drugs, taken, lifted straight from the game. I love that so much. I love when that's lifted out. It works well as well. The chemistry between them is fantastic. And as you said, the movie that they watch as well, perfect. It's fan service. It's straight into The Last of Us 2 as well when that's mentioned. I love this little moment. And again, it could just be a simple moment, a daughter giving the father a present, but because it's a watch and because it's working now, it's so prevalent is when we see later on what happens with that. I mean, what do you think of this little moment, Joy?
I really enjoyed it. I think that the directors and writers did a really great job in making us fall in love with Sarah, which isn't something
Yeah.
we get to experience in the game.
Hmm.
I think that the heartbreak is necessary to
Hmm.
really create this through line of love and what happens when a parent loves a child and in the apocalypse and what that could mean. I do think I feel like there were so many parallels from the beginning half of the episode to the second half, and I just thought the drug deal line was
Mm.
also poignant in that it comes up later on. It's a bit of a foreshadowing moment, which is
Yeah.
funny.
Hmm.
But I loved it. I thought it was such a sweet scene.
Right. Perfectly played. And then, it's undercut as well when, Joel gets a call from Tommy. He says he's in jail. He had a bit of a fight. He stuck up for a waitress and then he's been put in jail. So this then separates Joel and Sarah. And then he goes off. Sarah goes to sleep. And then this exactly here is where we pick up from the video game. So this is signposted right now. Hello, video game here. So then, it's early on in the morning. Well, it's like really late at night, sorry. Sarah wakes up to the sounds of like stuff happening outside. We hear it. Now, I love this. The cinematography is beautiful where we can just hear stuff in the distance. There's such like a sense of distance in this where you can hear
Mhm.
explosions, you can hear voices, there's lights flashing kind of through the window. It's a sense of urgency, like shit is getting real out there. What is going on? And we hear like helicopters, everything like that. It's such a brilliant soundscape of like disaster that's happening outside. And then, oh my god, so this whole section is brilliantly played again. So like, Sarah goes downstairs, the neighbor's dog who we saw earlier on that was staring at the granny paws on the window staring at her, and that dog's acting. Can we just for a second,
So
like,
good.
the fear on that dog's face? How did they do that? I hope that there's a blurb of no dogs were harmed in the making of this TV show because wow, that dog is killing it. And then, yeah, so obviously that's Sarah's reason to go outside. She's like, right, I'll take you back to the neighbors. God, the tension of that dog when she's trying to take it back to the house and the dog's like backing away, like, no, 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 I'm not going in there. I'm not going in there. And then just darts off. I mean, that section alone, she's looking at the house somewhere she's been before, a sense of calm, sense of safe, and then just seeing the door kind of ajar and see the dog run away is just brilliantly played.
I think we all were just waiting for that moment where it's like, no, not the dog. I think they
Yeah.
I think they did that on purpose to freak us
Right.
out a little bit. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
And props to the doggo.
And then again, this is full on horror movie stuff. And I'm a big horror movie fan. I eat this up. So Sarah creeps in, it's this darkened house. She can hear something at moments when you hear breath, you hear something, but you have no idea what's going on. When she sees the blood mark on the floor, and she's like almost like, "Whoa, what the
Mm.
heck?" And then like when she pushes the doors open into the kitchen, my God, like walking into a massacre, sees the man, he's got like a massive gouge out of his shoulder, and just looks at her and just says, like whispers in like a rushed kind of whisper, "Please help me." And then we look over and we see the granny. Now we were talking about before, reanimated and just eating on the floor. And this is the first time that we see the tentacles, coming out of somebody's
Mm.
mouth. And even as you and I, Joey, as like gamers, because it's not that it's spores in the game, right? And gas masks, everything like that. But to see those tentacles was so interesting. Brilliant choice. It makes sense for the TV show. Trying to film people with gas masks all the time would be really tough. So I
Agreed.
love that they went. I love that they went for this because it's just weird and freaky. And every time you see it, it's that sense of whoa. And I just love that moment when the granny stops and just looks up at Sarah, and Sarah looks at her, and they make eye contact for a second, and just the tentacles come out. Whoa, what a
Yeah,
moment, right?
it was great. Um, I also think that the decision to not do the spores was smart in that maybe it's a little too close to home, especially
Yeah,
The Last of Us 2 coming out like in the middle of the pandemic. I'm sure there was some
right.
feedback where it was like a little too close to home. And I think the whole mask situation is really is a smart note to say that, to anticipate that. I thought it was really really brilliant. I also want to note that when we close up on the poster, going into the QZ, we see the infection times, and when somebody's bit on
Mm,
the neck, it says it's like 5 to 15 minutes is how the infection could spread. And we actually see as the man is on the floor, and like we didn't see him eat any biscuits, so we're assuming that, you know, later on we kind of assume that the grandma's the one who got it exclusively, but his hands start kind of contorting, and I think it's
mm,
interesting that we're kind of seeing the spread already, which then mirrors back to the classroom scene with the hand twitching and all of these very specific details that when you rewatch it, you're like, oh, okay, I see how this, they really made a three-dimensional experience. But
mm.
I really enjoyed it. Did you like her scream?
Yes, my
So
God.
horror.
So
So
horror.
horror. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting? Like for horror movies, you can rate people on their screams. And if they've got a good scream, you know you've got a good horror. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, perfect. Loved it.
And her body movements. I to go back to that idea of being devoid to animated, and how
Hmm.
the idea of how this fungus spreads and how it's
Yeah,
different from previous zombie prototypes is really interesting.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And again, like, when Sarah runs outside and then, she's like looking kind of like, what the hell's going on? And then we obviously see Joel and Tommy arrive in the truck. And like the first thing they're like, get in, get in. Like, things are happening. And as you said, we see the granny kind of run out and like falls off the porch and falls on the ground. It's that reanimation straight away, this like, brought back to life, so to speak. And then this is a key moment right here. And this is the kind of parallels between Ellie and Sarah. So when we see the granny kind of gets up and she starts running towards Joel, Joel has like a wrench in his hand and he just obviously hits her across the face and she goes down. Sarah's reaction to that moment is natural. It's incredible. It's really shook up. It's horrified. It's like pleading with her dad, like, is she dead? What did you just do? Type thing. We haven't got time to assess the situation. Get in the truck. That parallel later on, which we'll talk about this towards the end of the episode, when we see Ellie's reaction to something that Jules does, is completely different, but also
Love.
very important to recognize the difference between those two characters.
Love.
This is lifted from the games, Joey. Like this literally lifted from the
It was
first game.
amazing.
So the details in this moment, getting in that truck, the way they drive, pretty much everything you see is from the point of view of the video game.
Yeah.
I love that, like when Joel's driving away, we see the neighbor again who's now infected. He kind of blasts past him, the car hits him with, well, Tommy's driving, but hits him with the car. And then, you hear one of the neighbors shout, like, what the fuck, Joel? What are you doing? And then you just see in the background them run over and dive on them.
Can we also just talk about the audio engineers and how
Oh,
they designed the audio to be so much like the game? And that moment
yes,
specifically was one of the moments where it sounds like it would in the game. There's so many
yes.
instances specifically that I was just like, whoa, blown away by the audio engineering. So, hats off to that.
As well, like the sound changes when they get inside of the car and they shut the car doors.
It's
It goes
brilliant.
like, it's so well done.
It
And as you
really
said,
makes you
it's,
feel as a fan like you're playing the game. It was
yes.
that moment exclusively that I was like, whoa, all right,
Hmm.
we're
Yeah,
here. We're in The Last
yeah.
of Us. It's happening.
It's VR now, like literally, like to
Yeah.
the point, like where they're driving, the road signs that they look at lifted from the game. They drive past the barn on fire, lifted from the game. Like there's so many little references when they're driving on the road and there's the family on the side of the road and they're trying to stop them, flag them down. And
Mm.
like, Joel says, drive on somebody else. Like, and I think is it Sarah says or Tommy says, oh, they've got a kid. And he says, yeah, we do too. And it's like, keep going, don't
Yeah.
stop. All of these little moments, it's like peppered throughout this whole kind of introduction here. It's
It was
just so
brilliant.
bloody well done, right?
It was really, really well done.
They come to the big, like, cars all backed up this big traffic jam. They then go through the fields. They end up in the town. This sense of urgency and how this was filmed was just incredible.
Mhm.
This is like Apocalypse 101. Like people running in the streets screaming, buildings on fire, you see like blood on people. They're trying to go down the street. They can't. They start to reverse back. And like all the time the camera's changing, moving around inside the car, which is exactly what happens in the game. You're
So
still
good.
controlling Sarah at this point. She moves around. You can look like 360 degrees kind of and look around to see what's going on. It's so well done, right?
Yeah. So there was one instance about the cars blocking off the city that I actually had a question about. And I didn't know if you picked up on it, but um when Tommy is in prison and Joel goes to
Hmm.
pick him up,
Hmm.
is he in the city and he gets arrested and he's brought to a jail outside of the city? Is this
This is what
another bullet dodge moment? Because
this
we're
is
we're
what I
noticing with
wondered.
the road blocked off, and Sarah asks why did things blow up, and then episode 2 it's explored a little bit more, but the city was being bombed. They were trying the government was trying to get rid of the city,
Mm.
and I thought it was interesting because I was like, because I remembered them speaking, and Joel had to really drive somewhere to get Tommy, and I just was I don't fully remember that dialogue. I didn't have the time to go back and like really analyze it. But did you pick up the same thing?
Yeah, I wondered because I was like, how far away has Joel gone to like get Tommy? How did he have to post bail? Like, how did he get
Yeah.
that sorted out and then come back so quickly together? My assumption is that it's a local jail that he's gone to, being that it's a bar fight, and being put in sort of local jail, which would make it easier for Joel to then get him and bring him back.
Yeah.
Obviously, if it was the city, if he was put into the city, it would be a completely different scenario.
Yeah.
And the fact that we see Tommy here makes me lean more on the fact that it was a local jail. Whereas kind of, if he was put into the city, I don't think Joel would have been able to get him, to be honest. I think it would have been too far gone. Now, again, this is different from the game, like where we see the airplanes come over and then we just see an airplane crash right in the street. And
Oh,
God, I loved it. Like it
I'm
was just
terrified of airplanes, so I hated it, but it was so good.
so well done. I love that. The plane comes down and then you just see like the reaction of people there reversing back. Something flies off the plane and then hits the car, right? And then again, this is still carried on from the video game where, they're crawling out of the wreckage, like they're all disorientated. Sarah's badly hurt her ankle, and then like Joel whips her up and is carrying her. And then obviously the police car hits the car and it separates Tommy and Joel and Sarah. Tommy's on one side with the rifle behind the car. It's very Resident Evil 2 in a weird way. And then Joel and obviously, Sarah are on the other side. This again is
It
so
felt very
this,
video gamey. Yeah, I loved it.
yeah,
It was like
yeah,
this is an obstacle that would happen in the game. I actually watched this
absolutely.
episode 3 times. Um,
Wow.
the second time I watched it was like halfway through, and my mom was interested, and I was like really talking the show up, so I was like I sat down and watched a little bit with her, and
Mhm.
she's screaming at the TV, and she's like, um,
Go
just go around the car.
around.
Why are you
Yeah.
separating? And I'm in my head, I'm like, is this because they're referencing the
Yeah,
game dynamic? Yeah.
100%. Love that. Love that, mom. Shout out to mom.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, like this just carries on where, Joel's like running through like the shops and like goes down the alleyway, sees all of them just like there, all the people like feasting on other people, and then just that one guy looks up and then just chases him through the shops and like kind of, through that restaurant, and he's just like belting through all of this lifted from the video games. It's so well done. The sense of tension that they've managed to capture from the game in this moment plays out brilliantly.
Yeah.
It's really well realized. And again, credits to all of the acting here, Pedro Pascal, like obviously like Sarah, just yeah, chef's kiss. It's so well handled. And then we come to the infamous scene. Yeah, this is when it gets really rough. And like I remember watching this for the first time. I remember like sitting like, looking over at my partner and being like, yeah, like he has no idea what's going to happen here. And I remember in the game, this destroyed me. So again, like it's very militant kind of conversation. First thing he says is, "We're not infected," and then, "Oh, my daughter's injured." And then he's like, the officer, the kind of army guy, is like the soldiers taking like, information on his headset. You just hear him saying, yes, sir," and then the final, "Yes, sir," like the realization of, I've got to do it. I've got to kill them. Oh my God. Like it plays out the mirroring of the video game. It just plays out exactly the same. Where, Joel's going to try and run away. Like we've got like the hill he falls down, the soldier fires, he spins around with Sarah and they both roll down the hill. I mean, this scene, Joey, like give me all your thoughts.
I think the biggest standout, aside from obviously, what happens with Sarah here, is this idea of distrust of the government and like what's
Mm,
happening. That out of every what like out of all of these bullets being dodged, the one bullet that's not is from not the infection, but it's from the government. It's from a person.
yeah.
I think it really paints a picture that we see unfold throughout the show, which I
Mm,
think is really lovely. And I thought that the mirroring, I was really at this point I was mostly agape by how similar it was to the game. I thought it was so beautifully done. And the acting. I mean, Sarah. was incredible.
And like Pedro Pascal as well. Like when,
Oh,
you know,
so
so we get the
good.
unfortunate moment. Oh my God. Like even watching, I was watching for the second time and like even I was tearing up again. I was like, it's so powerful. You know, unfortunately Sarah gets shot. You know, he goes over to try and comfort her. And just that like picking her up in his arms. Like obviously Tommy appears here again. He shoots the soldier. And Tommy, you know, comes from a military background. You know, so even when he looks over and like, you know, Joel's pleading with him saying, Tommy, like, please, and like that wound's too severe. And like the breathing, just everything. He's like Sarah's screaming. And one of the most
Yes.
important things of this entire scene, two important moments. One is that he's calling her baby girl, which, if you played the video games, will come back into it in a huge way. And I'm guessing it's going to be in the very last episode of the season. But then, yeah, the watch stops. The watch is broken again. And that is such just a metaphor. It is motif. It's everything. And that
Hmm.
watch stays broken.
Yeah. I was writing down all the times of all the clocks in case like times came back throughout the show.
Mm,
But I mean it's confirmed throughout the show when you really get a close look. It stops at 3:40 and Sarah wakes up in her bed around 2:15.
mm,
So, you know, it gives enough time for this to have played out where Joel's watch stops around 3:40 a.m. when this instance happens, and then
right.
he and the world are trapped in time.
From here, we get the flash forward to modern day 2023. Here we are. Now, again, I mean, this scene as well, like it's a small scene, but it's really interesting to set up. We get a lot of this, like in this kind of scene with the kid wandering through like the outskirts of Boston. We see like the
Mhm.
dystopia, like how everything's overgrown now, and like, you know, society and mankind as we know it is just overrun now. Like it's kind of gone. It's you know dilapidated. All the city and everything's gone. But then this scene with the kid is just it's heartbreaking, and it's a great setup for a lot of different things. So a kid kind of walks into a quarantine zone, is found by Fedra agents, taken in, and then it's just we get introduced to so much here. You've mentioned a couple of times already, Joey, the poster on the wall about infection rates. We see that's
Yep.
there. You know, we see the kid there sitting there, and then we get an introduction to the scanner, which is so important throughout this
Mm.
show, which is the scanner in the neck. If it goes green, the person's good. If it goes red, they're infected. You know, and we've got this really warm soldier. She like takes off her helmet. She sits down very motherly with the kid, and you know, is kind of chatting to the little boy. And then when that scanner turns red from the other soldier, you just know, you just like, oh my God. And like that soldier knows, and like, you know, it's all of this when she's like, oh, you know, we'll get you your favorite toys to play with. What's your favorite food? We'll get you that to play with. You'd like that, right? You'd really, really like that. And then just the needle into the kid. Oh, it's just devastating.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that there's no beat in their action. There's a protocol and they're following protocol.
Mm,
There's a slight response you see in the soldier, but it's barely there. This is
yeah.
something that they do frequently and they're setting that up. And of course we see that red light, which is really important in the show. Um, and then I think it's really interesting that it ends with Sarah. The beginning half ends with Sarah, and it's this really like emotional moment, this really
Mm,
sensitive moment surrounding a child's death. And then we go into this moment where it's like the complete opposite. I mean, it is, I keep saying this word, but it is so devoid of human response, leading into the moment where the woman can't carry the body into the fire, and then we see Joel's response,
mm,
which is he doesn't flinch, and then we kind of see this character transformation, um, and how he went from coddling to tossing. And
yeah.
I think it's such a nice way to begin that second half of the episode, um, and then to really position Joel's character moving forward in the show.
That was perfectly done. You know, like the moment, as you say, we cut to Joel, like, you know, we see him working with like people, they're like basically getting bodies and burning them. And like that motif of Joel holding the child and tossing it, you know, it's the metaphor of everything, as you said, coddling, throwing away now, throwing away a child. A child is like a symbol of, you know, the future, no future. It comes back to that opening line, we lose. And that tossing away, it's like the tossing away of future. There's nothing there now. There's nothing here anymore. And it's so strong. It's so powerful. And yeah, it's just that, as you say, brilliantly played with that mirroring of like when he had Sarah in his arms and now that time's gone. It's no more. That is gone. And it's so powerful. I mean, wow. And it's interesting because in the video game, you know, we kind of see not that in particular, but you know, we see other things where like we see as you're walking around the city, we see Fedra, they're kind of like ruffling people up. There's like, and even in here, we see like we're in a world now where we use rations. There's like we see them painting over the Firefly slogan, which comes back later on. We see public hangings. There's martial law going on, and that's just all very well captured. It just makes you realize now, like in 2023, we're 20 years later, and things are still horrendous. Like we still got this martial law happening. And it was just, yeah, it's really well captured and really well lifted from the game. And that the game, you're walking around as Joel and you're seeing these things happen. And they've really captured that really well, right?
They did. They're setting up the dystopia, and a lot of famous zombie tropes will take place immediately as the outbreak happens, and like what happens kind of shortly after. This is 20 years have passed. So
Yeah.
there is a governmental system. It doesn't necessarily work. That's why we meet the Fireflies, and we understand that there's people trying to undo this, but we kind of see that the way the world is operating, and it is dystopian government. I also like that we see Joel as someone who is kind of empty. He's, what job pays more? When he's asking about if they have any more jobs for him to get the
Yeah.
rations, and and how desensitized he is to this world, I think is a really interesting shift.
You learn like over this time that Joel has really kind of knuckled down and just become this almost dangerous person, really.
Yeah.
The threat of Joel is really elevated now. It's that, I've lost my world. I don't give a shit about this world. And that's
Mm-hmm.
really evident in his character as things go on. Tess talks about later on about like, Robert's scared of you and like, people are afraid of him. And even there's a little bit of that with the soldier as well. Like when he's talking to him later on, he's a smuggler now. He smuggles things, and he's getting this links back to the drug deal conversation. Like sell hardcore drugs, and now he goes with a soldier,
Now he
got this
does.
little bag. Now he does. He literally does. I love the line as well. It's the small line of when he asks for the bag back. And the soldier's like, gets the drugs off me. He's like, I'm going to need that bag back. Obviously, this is a world where you can't get that stuff so easily. So little
Yeah.
things like a little see-through bag, you're going to need that, right? So I just love the little details like that. So he's talking to this soldier. He's obviously doing a drug deal. He's like a smuggler. He's gotten on these pills. They're talking about it. And then there's talk, obviously, of a vehicle as well. Joel needs a vehicle. He needs a battery. And all of this is starting to like feed more to the story now. You're thinking like, right, okay, so Joel's doing this. He needs a vehicle. We're moving things along now. And I really like this. We're getting that sense of, he's going to go see Tommy. And there's these elements starting to flicker in. There's talk of the Fireflies as well that we saw like their slogan being painted over, but then we literally hear, the officer saying, the soldier saying, like, stay off the streets. They've been setting off explosives through the night. Stay off the streets. And again, it's such a nice change of dynamic with Joel here, where we see the last time he was talking to a soldier, he was pleading with him, and now he's the power in this scene. He's like, I don't give a shit anymore. If you kill me, then you would never get this stuff. And it's just such a difference in the performance. It's so good.
Yeah, and I really thought the line stood out when Joel says, "The more you shoot people, the harder it is to sleep, I guess." And then the soldier says, "I guess," implying,
Mm.
Joel has killed his fair share of people at this point. I also found this a bit ironic, as we'll see later on. I
Yeah.
also loved this scene because that isolated space felt so much like the game.
Yeah.
It's more recently in my memory, but it brought up the kind of back end bits of Seattle in The Last of Us 2, when you're trying to like get through the different doors of the buildings and you have the different zones set up with the trucks and the gates. It felt like I was in the game again. Because there's
Right.
some moments where it's like this isn't identical to the game, but it's similar. This was one of those moments where I was like, this is exactly where this would be happening in the game. And I
And then
also like
we
that they brought up Fedra QZ in Atlanta, because this shows that it's not just Boston.
Yes, of course. Like this is a global thing,
Yeah.
and obviously that plays perfectly into, as you said, the sequel of the game as well. When it's set in a completely different city. This is everywhere now. And as the episodes go on, like episode 2, the way that starts shows just the global catastrophe that this actually is.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah, it's little moments like this that are peppered through. You've got to hang on to those lines because they're so important when we get callbacks to them later on. You're like, yes, I remember when this happened, when that was mentioned. Everything kind of pays off. And throughout the whole show, it's a payoff show and it pays off really, really well. Then we get our introduction to Tess. Now, Anna Tov is one of my favorite actresses of all time. And I'm not just saying that literally, like the television show Fringe, like is one of my all-time favorites, and she's the lead in that. phenomenal. And when I knew she was going to play Tess in this, I was like, all right, yeah, perfect, incredible. You know, like she even did voice acting work for a video game called Heavenly Sword, like came out for the PS3 way back in the day. She was amazing in that as well. Yeah, I love it. Do you know Anna Torv, Joey?
I don't, but I fell in love with her immediately. She's
Mm.
stunting. She is
Hmm.
stunting. And her voice is like it's like my new favorite voice. Like I want her to be my ringtone. I want her to read my meditations. I want her to scream at me to work out harder. I want to hear her voice. I don't know. It was so she had such a commanding presence immediately. I thought she was so captivating. Loved her.
Yeah, I mean, tell us what happens in this scene, Joey.
So she's been beat up by some kids who we learn are at the age that they are uh, post outbreak, which is really
Hmm.
interesting because again, that's not something that we explore often in apocalyptic fiction.
Hmm.
The idea that there's a whole generation of people who know only this world, super interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, the Robert has she made a deal with this guy named Robert. She gave him money for a car battery, and he sold it to someone else. And we were getting such a nice character exposition here because we see how much command she has, and we also get the dynamic between her and Joel that Robert says, "What about your guy?"
Mm.
And I think this creates this kind of hierarchy where it's like Tess is in charge and like Joel is like the muscle.
Yeah.
And she says he answers to me, which I
Hmm.
think is so cool because
Yeah.
even though we know Joel at this point is a badass, we see it immediately. We're like, all right, so Tess is also a badass, and I'm here for it. I love
Yeah.
a strong female lead like this.
Absolutely.
It's so gives me everything I need. I'm like, I want more. Give me some dessert.
Absolutely. No, it's beautifully played. Like Anna Torv for me is just a force. And like you should really check out Fringe if you like her, Joey, because she's
Oh,
just as
I will
good.
look. I'm she's it's at the point where I'm like, I'll watch anything she's in just to hear her speak.
She's yeah, honestly amazing. But like even in like you're saying like the way she speaks, which is phenomenal. It's such a authoritative presence in her
Oh,
voice.
it's
But
so
as well,
calm.
yeah, it's so calm, but there's so much like there's like undertones of anger and like don't fuck with me type attitude, which is amazing. But like the way she talks to Joel in this episode, and she's like, I need you to take a breath. And like she talks to him almost like he's like a child. And like
Yeah.
he needs to listen to her. And like almost like she's the only one who can bring him down. You know, like how she calms him. And like, she's like, don't know, but we'll find him. Like just the calmness and the that sinister tone in her voice is fantastic. It's
And
so,
and
so well
how scary that these boys just beat her up and she's
done.
staring at Robert who just sold something that she gave money for, which is probably something like money, anything at this point in society is exceptionally crucial. And
Yep.
she's kind of just like, it's cool. We're
Hmm.
good.
Yeah.
How scary.
I know, right? She dominates that situation in pretty much any scene she's in, and I
She's
love
great.
that about her.
She was amazing.
We get an explosion, Firefly explosion. She gets the hell out of there. She's arrested by Fedra agents in the street.
Oh, I was just gonna say I really like the parallel to imprisonment again. It's just such a nice parallel between the first half of the show and the second half. There's so many parallels, but they're just taking place in a different world. So as Tommy was imprisoned in the first half, so is she imprisoned in this.
Yeah, two people that mean so much to Joel.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting. Then we get our introduction to Ellie. Now, can we just talk for a second about Bella Ramsey? My God.
I learned Bella Ramsey, they did not play the game prior to
Hmm.
preparation of the show and was simply directed correctly. And I think their instincts were really spot on. And their presence in Game of Thrones was so sassy that I knew it would translate correctly into Ellie. As soon as that casting was announced, I was like, all right, they're gonna kill it. And they have so far.
Hmm.
Obviously, Ellie goes through quite a transformation as the show goes on,
Yeah.
but so far so good in my opinion. I thought it was really great.
Yeah, I mean they're playing it perfectly where both characters are so kind of distant from any sort of relationship with anybody. Like I know that Joel's obviously got Tess, but even that relationship feels strained in some ways. And yet, Ellie is so restrained from Joel. Like at the start, like there's two individuals that just clash. But the way that relationship evolves and changes through the show, that's the magic of it. And that's the magic of the game as well, which is why it's so important when we get those words right at the beginning of this episode, baby girl. When this comes back later on, it's so important to pick up on that because that's it's integral to the relationship that Joel and Ellie build. It's phenomenal. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Bella Ramsey, I think, is incredible. They just capture everything, for the fact that they've never played the game as well is impeccable, obviously directed very, very well. But it's that sassiness. It's that, you can't talk, you can't talk anything to me. I don't need any of this shit. And even like, when the Fireflies are saying, can you count down from 10 to 1? And, Ellie starts to count down really fast. Like, no, 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 slower. And then, and then it's like fucking 1. Like just those little moments and like kicking the food back across the floor and everything. It's the perfect introduction. She's like, Veronica, just like it was yesterday. It's that perfect sassiness within that character. And I just love that introduction to Ellie because it captures the character so well.
Yeah, yeah. And I really enjoyed the exploration of the symptoms. Because not in the beginning we see the twitching of the hand, we see the coughing, but slurred speech is also
Yes,
a symptom. So we see the counting as a signification of that, which I thought was a nice subtle detail.
absolutely. And again, when they leave Ellie alone in the room, like head down, and then she looks up and then just sees, the slogan again, when you're lost in the darkness. And that shot itself, that's like that you could just take a photo of that and hang it on your wall. That's a darkened part of the room. Ellie sitting, this light coming through the window, shining on her. That motif alone is saying the next part of the slogan, look for the
Mm-hmm.
light. That was
Yes.
brilliantly shot. It's so wonderfully done and just so subtle for people that, again, that might not played the games. It's there on the face. It's just, yeah, the motifs and the imagery within the show alone is breathtaking.
And also when Joel is speaking to the soldier, we see in yellow the full expression on the wall. And we see
Mm-hmm.
the expression again spray painted. And the spray paint looks identical to the game, which is lovely. And we don't see the full expression, which I think, maybe it might speak to something.
So then we get like a quick introduction to a guy who works on the radio tower. Obviously, there's a massive line waiting to see him. People that want to call out to their loved ones to, see if they can get any kind of contact with people that are outside of the city. By the way, the guy on the radio is the voice actor of Tommy in the game. I thought that was really interesting
I
how
did
they've
not know that.
included
How
him that way.
nice.
Yeah, so it's nice that he's included in that way. Um, so obviously, Joel, I love that just marches to the front of the queue because he don't give no fucks about waiting. Goes in. Obviously, the guy recognizes him. He's like, "Yep, come straight in." And like, he's talking to him, like saying, "Have you heard anything? Have you heard anything at all? What about through the night? Have you heard anything? Like, are you listening?" He's like, "Well, I've got these people listening as well." Basically, he wants to hear about Tommy. Has he heard anything about Tommy at all? What's going on? Where is he? And Tommy's the big question mark up until this point. We haven't really referenced, we don't know where Tommy is either. We've heard Joel talking to the soldier about he needs a car, he needs a battery, I need to go to do this. And like, we're starting to put the pieces together now, right? Joel wants to go and find Tommy. Where is he? We don't know. And obviously, Joel doesn't know. And then it's that moment of on the map, right? Can you mark on the map where this radio tower is? Where's the last place that we heard from him? Here, that's all Joel needs. Off he goes. And again, it's like, right, we've got motive now. We know what's happening. Joel wants to go and get Tommy. And again, it was a small scene, but really important to give us that direction of the episode, right?
Yeah. I like the power we see in Joel, how he's essentially haggling with the soldiers. He's cutting the line to speak to the guy who orchestrates the radio. Even prior to this part of the episode, as soon as the outbreak happens, he's kind of gutturally, instinctually making decisions about where to go and what to do. And we're kind of seeing that character explored more where, the intellectual properties of a person in this world, as established, Joel isn't like the brightest, he putting his shirt on backwards. He doesn't know where Jakarta is. He is now operating on brute instinct, and we learn how important that is in this world, that he is somebody who is clearly thriving. I mean, he cut that whole line and nobody could say boo to him. And all these people who are in charge are working with him in some way, which I think is really interesting, that he's reached this level of power to some extent.
Absolutely. And that power continues to grow, especially at the very end of this episode. What happens? That's like the brute power, right? Like we've got hierarchy power, but we've got the brute power as well. And that's really
Mm-hmm.
interesting when that plays out. So then obviously Joe goes back and then Tess comes over to speak to him. We've kind of referenced this scene already, but I mean, God, Tess is so good in this scene. So again, walks in, like Joel sees her, obviously bruised, cuts all over her face, and she says the line, they plays it off, I was jumped by some guys, which again is directly from the game. But what's nice is that in the game, we never got to see that, but we did in the TV show. And I really love that they included that with Tess. And then this is the moment when, Joel is like up out of his chair. He's like ready to go into action. Like, who the fuck did this to the woman that I'm with? And it's that the way that she brings him down. I need you to take a breath. And
Love
she
it.
just controls him. It's so well acted by Anna Torv, and like everything when she's like, saying, don't know where the guy is, don't know where this is, but we're going to get that battery. And like, it's that line I'm paraphrasing a little bit when she's like, I said that you weren't going to hurt him, but I would really very much like you to hurt him. And the little smile that they share between each other, it's just beautifully played.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think the whole world building of this scene in general is great. Joel sifting through the floorboards prior to this, the dust through the window. I thought that shot was gorgeous. I also love how when Tess gets into bed, she holds Joel. So
Yes.
it's so interesting that this person, Joel, even going back to the beginning of the episode when he tells Tommy not to smoke the cigarette, we see Joel is a caretaker. And yet Tess is able to take care of him, which I think is so interesting. I love that. I love that so much. I thought it was so powerful.
Yeah. And it's really interesting that you say that, because in episode 2, with obviously when we cover that, the passing of the torch of the caretaking that literally happens at the end of that episode is so important.
Yeah.
How Joel becomes the caretaker again, and the solo caretaker now. And it's really, really interesting. That's why it's so important to look back at moments like this and pick up on things like that, because so much happens in little moments like this, then birth into other things, which is so well done. So well done.
And the idea, and I've spoken before just briefly about the friction of love and care, being codependent and love, and we're seeing that dynamic unfold.
So then we get our introduction to Marlene. Now, this, obviously, the actress who plays Marlene is the same actress who voiced her in the game. So this is Merle Dandridge. Same actress, beautifully done. She's incredible. And the right decision. It should have been her to play her. She's amazing. She obviously, we find out, she walks into the room. There's like people looking over maps and everything like this. And she's kind of chatting. She's obviously the authoritative figure. They answer to her. And we find out, that she is the Firefly leader. And again, I mean, this performance it's very similar to Tess in that she does get riled up. She does shout at one point. But again, there's so much authority in her voice. And when she speaks, everybody else shuts up. And it's really, really, really well played. Just the talk that they have, the sense of urgency. People are checking her and she's coming back saying, who the fuck are you talking to, basically? And like talks them all down. You can tell that she's organized, efficient. She knows what she's doing. She's 2 steps ahead of everybody else in that room. It's really, really organized beautifully. It's really well played. Talking about taking Ellie to this West Point. It's like a Firefly outpost.
I really loved Marlene's introduction. I like the exploration. I like the subtle hint when she hands the underling Kim the sheet of paper, and they kind of hint toward why they're bringing Ellie across the country.
Yes.
And the idea of it's like slowly unfolding the importance of Ellie. And I agree about the commanding presence and comparative to Tess, because that's the same thing I wrote down and thought about Marlene, how she had a very similar presence to me. She immediately was commanding my attention and she felt so powerful.
Even when she goes in and chats to Veronica, aka Ellie, and again, the presence that she has in this scene and the power, like Ellie's sitting there with a flick knife when she comes close to her. And I love that she just sits down next to her and just calmly just takes a moment. And like even Ellie says, like, you're not afraid of me. Just those moments, like it's just beautifully played. And I love that. Again, she's one-upping Ellie here. She's like, I know your name, Ellie. And like, she's like, oh, will you return me back to Fedra Military School, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, well, I put you there. And she's like, I know everything about you. So this whole charade can stop because I know you. I love it. I love that there's a mention of Riley, which is a mention to the DLC of the video game as well, which is obviously Ellie's friend. All of this, like this scene for me is crucial because it's another scene where it's moving things forward. We find out Ellie's purpose in this. We find out why Ellie is so special. And it's such an important scene. The dynamic between them is so well played. She even says, like, you know, I'm not your mother. Do you look like you'd be my daughter? But the mother-daughter kind ofness in this scene plays off really well.
And the deeper relationship we're seeing with Marlene and Ellie and Ellie's history. Again, going
Hmm.
back to the opening of the whole show, the directors, the writers were basically saying like we're going to give you way more backstory, way more information, and we're seeing
Hmm.
that now because Marlene and Ellie's interaction in the game is not nearly this involved.
Yeah, exactly. And it's beautiful that with a TV show like this, we can take our time to let these relationships breathe.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal. It works incredibly well. So now we get Joel and Tess. Obviously, they are, when they were talking before, they know that basically Robert, who has got, this deal, they're going to go basically and see what the hell's going on, find out where this battery is for the car that they need. They're basically going to go and fuck them up, right? So then, even like the conversation they had before, if we go through the tunnels, if we go down this way, it'll take us there a lot easier. And I love that we see the infected on the wall. So when they
Oh,
break in, they go down.
stunning.
It's incredibly well done. Like the way that they've got torches, right? And then they're looking around. Anna Torb's reaction is Tess when she sees that scream that she gives out, that guttural, ah, just that disgust, like, Jesus Christ, it's there. It highlights the fear that you need to have when you see the affected in that type of, guys. Shit's going to get real if you see someone like that. And again, it's foreshadowing for episode 2 when we see that, how scary and how dangerous that really is. And just that moment, it looks beautiful on the wall as well, right?
It was stunning. I thought this was so beautiful. When I see that kind of tendrily vine-like trickling,
Hmm.
it's very much like the the fungus coming out of the person's mouth who's infected. I
Yeah.
think it's such an eerie, uncomfortable yet poetic image.
Hmm.
Um, how it's almost this like return to nature in some regard, how these creatures are submerging themselves to cement, to walls, to places
Mm.
previously inhabited by people, yet they are of nature. And it's interesting that it opened up with this kind of global warming conversation to some very, very minor extent. But the idea of how there's this reverting back to nature in some regard, and how it's kind of morphing to the previous world. Even just the video game still, when the sign on credits or the sign on scene where it's just
Mm.
like the window with the vines wrapped around. I mean, it's these images that make me think of The Last of Us and the world building and kind of that merging of fungus nature with
Hmm.
previously inhabited spaces. And it also speaks to the type of infected, the zombies, if you will, how they are equally as inhabited and nature is equally as adhered to them.
Absolutely. Yeah, beautifully put, Joey. It's nice, like as a writer as well, these are the moments you hang on to, like
Oh
how
God,
the imagery is created like that.
so pretty.
So then we get Joel and Tess, and they're going to basically Robert's place now, or they assume it's Robert's place. So they're going to go and basically fuck him up, right? So I love that they push through the wall, and then they're in, and then straight away, like Joel is looking around, like, what the fuck? Like everybody's dead. And like Joel and Tess are like, whoa, like something's happened. Like they're all just laying out dead on the floor in these corridors. And then I love that we hear a commotion or something in the distance. And it's that moment of, oh, something is happening. And then just that when they round the corner, and then we see obviously Marlene, she's like against the wall, huddled over, like looks like she's injured. She's got her like other person there as well, who's like missing the ear, which I love that line later on. And then just that moment of when they turn around and see Joel, and then Ellie obviously breaks out of the door, tries to like obviously go to stab Joel, and like Joel's completely disarms her and just knocks her on the ground. Now, this is such an important motif where Joel's pointing the gun at a child that he doesn't even know. Bearing in mind that that's the way he lost his daughter. And again, this is a way that's showing the hardened side of Joel, where he's like, all fucks are gone now. This is a hardened man who, in many ways, is dead inside. It's just pointing that gun at a child. That's such a strong motif of just how much that Joel that we knew is gone. He's hardened now. He's tough. That exterior, there's no fucks given anymore. And I just love this moment between them. What's your thoughts on this scene, Joey?
I mean, the first thing I acknowledge is Ellie's spunkiness.
Mm.
And I think that's just a through line that is just lovely, and Bella Ramsey's capturing it perfectly. I do note the transition that Joel's character is taking. So he goes from being this caretaker, he's taking care of his daughter and other people around him. He then has a heartbreaking moment and then moves into this cold world where he's holding a child, throws this child into the fire, and now he has another moment where he's pointing a gun at a child. I
Mm,
mean, Joel is all instinct. He's brute force. He is a survivalist, and that is exclusively how he's navigating this world. He is so shut off. It's the only way that he's getting through. And so far, the only moment of tenderness we've seen is between him and Tess. And Tess, as tender as she is also exceptionally tough. So
mm.
I think it's going to be interesting to watch Joel's relationship with Ellie grow and his relationship with himself soften a little bit. And we see that softness come back a hint later on in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautifully played. Like obviously, props to Pedro Pascal for just nailing that. It's just honestly
Yes.
it's beautiful to watch.
I also want to note that this is the first time we learn more about Joel and Tommy's story.
Hmm.
And Tommy says to Marlene, I'm sorry, Joel says to Marlene about Tommy, "You're the one who turned him against me,"
Yeah.
which I think is really interesting. And it happens so quickly that I didn't fully notice it the first time I watched it.
We're getting little crumbs of like more of this relationship of what's happening, how, Marlene is actually much more of a bigger role within the Joel storyline. It's not just such a
Yes.
separate character. And that's
Mhm.
really interesting, especially the way that as soon as he sees her, he just says Marlene, just recognizes her straight away. And that there's a history between them that we're yet to uncover. And it's
Yeah.
really, really interesting. I love that layering of the storytelling there. It's fantastically done.
Yeah, and Marlene does say, "We know what you're both capable of," which I thought was nice and so funny because obviously we know what happens. But she says,
Yeah.
"Joel, don't fuck this up, please,"
Yeah.
which I think is really, it's an interesting, we're gonna see what happens as the show goes on.
Right. But obviously, yeah. So then we find out that, Robert was trying to sell this battery to Marlene as well. And then, there's this whole thing about Robert fucked them both over. This is why this gunfire like happened. And then, straight away, Marlene thinking on her feet, right, okay, well, I'm in no position now to take Ellie anywhere because I'm literally, she even says, like, guys, I'm bleeding out. Like at one point, which I really like that line. And like her kind of subordinate, as it were, is like saying, let me do it, let me do it. And she's like, you're missing a fucking ear. And I love that the camera just lingers on her ear that's been blown off. But then, yeah, then this is her thinking, right, well, Joel and Ellie can do it. Sorry, Joel and Tess can do it. They can take Ellie. Like, they can do it. It'd be perfect. And it makes that trade deal with them. Look, you get to the outpost, you take as much stuff as you want, just take her there. And Joel's a bit like reserved. He's like, no, absolutely not. I am not doing this. I'm not a babysitter. I'm nowhere. And it's Tess who's like, actually, we could benefit from this massively. As smugglers, we could get a lot from this trade deal. And then they agree to do it. They go into this room with Ellie, and then, sitting down, we get the butterfly hanging up in the window again that Ellie's sitting right next to, which is exactly the same looking butterfly that we had way back in the early morning scene when Sarah's sitting having breakfast with Joel. Beautifully done, nice kind of foreshadowing of the relationship that's going to build there. Really nice imagery again, just to bring us back to that. That was wonderfully done. And I love all of this, like the radio codes when like talking about like Ellie opens the book and it's like decades, like the 60s, the 70s, everything like that, which again comes into the end of the episode. And it's just beautifully done. The imagery in this room, the way the light is coming through the window, it's a fantastic little scene, right?
It's lovely. I love the radio, the
Mm,
whole I again this focus on time.
yeah.
Um, I also enjoy that we get to see Joel and Ellie's dynamic unfold a little bit. We get to
Hmm.
see Joel kind of take a little bit of a parental edge to how he's speaking to Ellie, which
Hmm.
you would think that at this point he's been classified as, but Grendel. He is a monster. So for him to be uh kind of approaching someone differently for the first time who's not Tess, a stranger, I think is
Mm,
really interesting. We're kind of seeing the seeds of that softness start to open up a little bit. Um, there was one line here I really loved, where Ellie says, "What are you doing?" and Joel says, "Killing time," which
yeah.
again, the broken watch, stuck in time. I thought
Hmm.
was such a nice expression used wisely.
Yes. And as well, we get the mention of Bill and Frank for the first
Yeah.
time, which is really, really nice and how important that comes into episode 3. And then, yeah, obviously Joel then naps, and this happens in the video game. And then I love that when he wakes up and like Ellie is just onto him, and straight away, she's a smart girl, and I love when she's like saying like, oh, I heard something on the radio, something about wake me up before you go, playing really innocent. And Joel's reaction was just like, shit. And she's like, gotcha. Hades means trouble. And I just love that she played him in that moment. That was so well done between them as well. The dynamic there was just excellent. I really, really love that. And again, a nice foreshadowing because the way the episode ends and we hear an 80s track. And I
And
love
Depeche
that, right?
Mode,
Depeche Mode, right? I
the
mean,
best.
the anthem and the lyrics in that song, like never let me down again. I mean, the name alone, hello, when she says, don't fuck this up, don't let me down. We get like the imagery of that song title alone is just iconic for this opening episode. Brilliantly done.
I also love when Ellie says, "So we're gonna be okay."
Yeah.
It basically gives permission for Joel to act like a parent. I think
Mhm.
that's the first moment he really sees her as a child. And I think he
Mm.
recognizes himself as a caretaker in that moment, where for the first time he's being asked to care for someone's feelings. And he
Yeah.
probably hasn't felt that way in a long time, but he's recognizing, oh, I know what it's like to have a daughter. I know what it's like to have to make that daughter feel like everything's going to be okay. And so
Yeah.
he kind of leans back, his body posture changes. He visibly alters in that moment. I think it was very, very, very interesting.
Yeah, and there's a lot of posture in this whole season. Like how in the 3 episodes that we've seen, how when people relax, it's that sense of they're in a heightened world where you've got to be on your guard the whole time. But when you get those pockets of moments of when you can relax, it really is so much more meaningful than what we would take for granted now. It's so beautifully played and so important.
Yeah.
Um, and then we move kind of towards the end sequence here. So then obviously they are trying to get outside of the quarantine zone, and this is very video gamey. This whole section, you could see this in the video game where they're dodging federal patrols. They're like going through little like tunnel ways. There's like light coming through. They're pausing while federal patrols go past. And I love as well. Ellie's lines are literally lifted from the game, right? When she's like, "I'm outside," like literally what she says in the game. Stepping outside, it's like, "Wow, like I'm out here for the first time. I've never been outside before." And again, it just shows that she's a product of this world. She's probably been like in facilities like that the whole time. She's never been let loose. Like the way, people are now. You can just go outside and enjoy life. Joel and Tess has had that. Ellie never has. So then they round the corner and they bump into a Fedra soldier, and it's exactly the same soldier that Joel was making the drug deal with. And everything's formal now. Whoa, shit, what are you guys doing outside of here? No. Like, everybody on your knees, get down on the ground. And like, I think even Tess is like, what are we doing this? And he's like, no, we're doing this by the book. We're doing this properly. And again, this dynamic shit like switches completely. They're on the ground. And then we get introduced to the scanner again. That scanner, like the imagery of that scanner, the red or the red or green, you just know for a fact something is going to happen here. And again, we get, they're talking to him at the same time. Scans Joel, green. Scans Tess, green. And then we don't get to see this with Ellie because it's the knife in the leg. It just, everything is so heightened, right?
Yeah, and even leading up to this, I mean, it's so interesting that there's this moment where Joel can relive or reclaim maybe something he deeply regrets of the past, maybe not handling
Mm.
the situation the same way, this post-traumatic response. There, even to get there, I love that they crawled underneath the school bus. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
It was like a reference to beginning, again, the parallels. They really focused on his watch, kind of planting the seed that this was coming, like this moment was coming.
Hmm.
And then we see Ellie's face as soon as he pulls out the scanner. And I
Yeah.
think it was so Ellie to have that response, and then right to her blade, which we know in the game is her primary weapon.
Yeah.
Obviously when she has guns it's different, but in the game that's the thing she always has, and especially in the second game when you're playing with other characters, she still has that switchblade. That is such a Ellie thing to do and have, and I thought it was just such a nice head nod to her character in
Mm.
the game.
Absolutely. And then Joey, what happens next?
Um, I really loved this moment
Same.
because it was kind of foreshadowed earlier on during the drug deal when he says, "I guess, like we know that you're capable of killing." I like how it started out with there was a bit of a bartering.
Hmm.
He was gonna be swayed to let them go, and
Yes.
then he points the gun. And then I think that this unfolding of self that we've experienced so far with Joel, where he's slowly softening in that moment, I think opening, cracking open to that part of himself that he's kept hidden allowed for that moment to really trigger a memory of the past.
Mm.
And he went into pure fury, demolishing the guy's face, which I
It's
thought was,
PTSD, right?
yeah. And how, as you brought up earlier, Ellie's response is
Yes.
so contrary to Sarah's.
Hmm.
Her expression's a bit neutral when you're watching. It's like, what exactly is she thinking? But it's this like mixture of, she's kind of like stunned, but she's kind of like into it. She's like, whoa,
Yes.
this is cool, but I'm scared. I don't know this guy. There's a lot going on, but she is intrigued. She is interested. And I think that sets up a really interesting dynamic that we're going to see play out between Ellie and Joel.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm so pleased you said that. It's intrigue. That's the word. It's like, whereas Sarah's reaction was, oh my God, I can't believe what I've just seen. I shouldn't have seen that. Whereas Ellie is more like, whoa, what the fuck am I seeing? I'm all in. I am intrigued. What is happening here? Just the way like she even like she's like hunched over but like leans round and like literally like looks around Joel to see what is happening.
Yeah.
And in that moment of when they share eye contact again and Joel like looks over at her and sees her looking, it's almost like it is just like a blank face of it's blank, but like blank intrigue where she's just like, whoa, like what is happening? And it's just that moment of again that slight little bit of it's that humanity in Joel that's coming out again. It's like, that he's gone full beast mode, right? Like punching that guy, it's like PTSD, like up, like he's so heightened. And then when he sees Ellie, the face of a child, that's what pulls him out of it. And again, it's beautifully played between them. It's so well done. Like honestly, everything is elevated. The energy in this scene alone is up, down, up, down. And just when we have that moment where they look at each other, and then Tess grabs the scanner and sees that it's positive, and then again heightens the situation, which is like Joel. And then the only thing I'll say about this episode is I wish that they lingered on this a little bit longer because it felt really quick. Where it's like Ellie shows the scars on her arm. She's like, "Look, this was off 3 weeks ago. I'm not infected. Like, you've got to trust me." Blah 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 blah. You hear the Fedra soldiers, everything's coming, everything's heightened, and then they just go. And I kind of wish they lingered on that a little bit longer because it's such an important plot point. But it still happens. We still get it. We understand that there's a lot going on in this scene, and they've got to just run. They've got to go right now because shit is getting real.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I wish this would have been explored a little bit more, but at the same time, from a consumer standpoint, like the
Mm,
general consumer, I think it was a smart choice to quickly move through this. It was almost like that ending of a chapter in a book that makes you want to turn the page and read the next chapter. It
yeah.
happens so quickly that you're kind of in this emotional mental kerfuffle and you're like, whoa, 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 wait, what's going on?
Yeah.
What? And so you're like, wait, I can't wait till next week. Oh my gosh, how do I learn more? And of course
Mm,
they explored a little bit more the following episode, but I think it really was well, good editing or good directing. And I know on the HBO podcast, both Neil and Craig Mazin, they explored that this wasn't the original ending of the episode,
right.
and that they kind of tested out the episode, and because there wasn't enough pull or drive to get people to want to watch the second,
Mm,
they took the first two episodes and shortened it into one. But I would imagine that's probably why they expedited this moment, if you will. And it's also
mm.
like that's probably exactly how it would have happened in real life.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they had to rush. There was no time to think. And I think that's part of this is we even see in the beginning of the episode, as soon as the outbreak starts, Joel is just strictly reactionary. There's no time to think. If you
Mm,
take a pause, if you think, you you might get caught. You might lose. So
mm,
it's about, and even when they're negotiating with Marlene, she's like, I'm bleeding out. You got to make a decision. There and Tess instantly comes up, makes up her mind. And in this world, there's no time to pause and think. It's all action, it's all guttural response. And I think that we're also going to see that unfold as well. We're going to see the
mm,
idea of what happens when you pause and think. What
mm.
happens, what emotionally creates that environment for you to want to pause and think. Um, Taking care of someone you love or the likes of. Um,
Yeah.
being codependent with someone, as is explored in this episode. But the idea of, you know, Joel kind of takes a shift a little bit where he starts to care a little bit more, and it goes from instinct to human.
Mm.
And in that humanness, there is room for error, which is very interesting. But I like that they rushed through it a little bit. But at the same time, I would have loved to see more of it.
Yeah, yeah. I think you raise an interesting point that, when the show does decide to breathe, it's always such important moments as why, they linger on something particular and why they have time. And again, it's that essence of time throughout the entire show. Why does this moment have time allocated to it, as opposed to other moments which don't? That's really integral. I mean, just from like, a standpoint, it's just because it's such a strong plot point that I wish that we got a little bit more of like, not even a guess in this moment of like, couldn't have explored it more in this moment because everything was happening at once. But just to have explored that somewhere where time could have lingered more and they could have spoken about it a little bit more, I think for me just would have worked a little bit better. But I do love the fact of the heightened kind ofness of this entire moment when people are coming, they have to go, we have to go right now. And in essence, as well as a watcher, as an audience, like we are like, shit, we're all in. Like we're following them on this journey. And that, that energy level and that the quickness of the scene works well in that regard. I think it works really, really well. And then we get the final shot, which is that slow zoom on the radio. We hear Depeche Mode playing again, as we've said, like Never Let Me Down Again, such an iconic title. And just we know now that 80s means danger. And that's a beautiful lead up, like just leaving us lingering for more. And I just think it was perfectly played. And I have to say, Joey, just final thoughts. What's your thoughts on the opening episode?
I think they did a really lovely job of adapting this into onto the screen. I always felt like The Last of Us could be a movie or a TV
Yeah,
series. So the fact that it is being done so well with such attention to detail, I don't think any deviations have compromised the integrity of the show. I think
no,
every minor detail that they've shifted, which is at this point very minor, has been has only enhanced what is gonna happen, and I'm excited to see how the show plays out, and I think they did a fabulous job.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think they've captured the video game and the world and the characters and everything about it so incredibly beautifully well, but in a way that allows people that have never played the games before to be welcomed into the world of The Last of Us. I think it it's beautiful. Like that's the word for it. Everything that they've done, like the cinematography, the imagery, the metaphor, the writing, the performances, all of this together works so well in conjunction with everything. And yet everything, I mean, there's 3 episodes out now, we've watched all 3. And yet the continuation is this world that they're building within. Everything feels right within that world. It's so well realized. It's so alive, but also dead. It's just fantastic. Like the contradictions that are in there, the juxtaposition works so well. It's beautiful. And every time I sit down to watch it, I feel like I'm watching something that is top tier television. And that's the mark of great writing, great performances, great direction. We always rate each episode out of 10.
Mm.
So what number would you give? I have a number written down. What number would you give this episode?
I wasn't prepared for this. I'm not gonna say it's a 10 out of 10
Mhm.
exclusively because I don't know, maybe if I watch the whole series and I go back and I think this is the episode that really nailed everything. Um, I want to say I mean, I don't think it deserves any lower than a 9. I think it nailed it. 8 would be, I don't even know if that would be fair because I want to give it a 10, but yeah. I'm like, I don't want to give it a perfect score because
Mm,
what is perfection in this dynamic or in this infrastructure? I don't know that just yet, but
mm.
I'm gonna say 9, yeah.
Yeah. So as I showed you there, I have 9 out of 10 written down as well. I think it's so hard to give an opening to anything a perfect score because you don't know like the rest of what's going to happen and how things are going to develop. And, you know, there's a lot that you don't know yet. But I think as an episode that stands where it is introducing us to a lot of things, where it is introducing us to this world, the world building, it's a fantastic introductory episode, but also gives so much more than just being an introduction. But as well, we're still kind of in the dark of like, there's a lot that we don't know yet. So I think to give it 10 as a perfect episode to me doesn't really make sense. but a 9 is definitely like the perfect score. I just think it gets so much right. It's so well done. And it gets me excited for more. And that's what every great opening should do. Joey, so coming back to the episode, I want to say again, a big thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me. I'm so excited to go through the other episodes with you and to go all the way through 10 episodes, which is phenomenal. And I think you and I were on the same level of just appreciation of the show. And I think that really kind of helps with when we're talking about it because we just fangirl about it so much. But before we do go, Joey, just pimp out your stuff. Tell everybody where they can find you on socials, where they can find your band stuff. Let them have it.
Sure. So I am at Joey Dean Official on TikTok, on Instagram. You can also find my YouTube, youtube.com/Joey Dean. It might be Joey Dean Official. I could be wrong. But if you just search Joey Dean, I pop up. My band's name is King Vagabond. And we're at The King Vagabond on all platforms, and kingvagabond.com for our music. We are on all streaming platforms as well as on YouTube to watch our music videos. And if anybody wants to learn more about music marketing, I don't know if the audience will be here for that, but maybe you can type in artistalignmentacademy.com and learn more.
There you go. So make sure you go and check out Joey and everything that he's got going on there. But yes, so again, thank you everyone for listening. If you are just listening, you can watch this episode on YouTube as the video portion. But again, if you do just want to listen, we are on all streaming platforms. If you do want to find us on social media, we are last week on Pod. You can type that into Instagram. You can type that into Twitter. If you want to follow me, I am at Straughan87 on socials. Just type that in. You'll see my face. So thank you again, Joey. This has been incredible. So excited for episode 2, and make sure everybody comes back for episodes 2 and 3 and onward because we are ready to go on this journey.
I'm pumped. Thank you for having me, Adam.
Of course, anytime. Until next time, everyone, take care.